Hello there. Um, I This is Mal Walker. You should know that because you're on my channel. But this is my first time streaming, talking about Ahsoka outside of the watch parties I've been doing weekly over on Strike 721's channel. One of my good buddies I actually went to Celebration with this past spring. But I'd kind of been holding off on doing at least episode reviews or weekly reviews just because it seems like no matter what anyone says on YouTube or anywhere, there's people that are very against that to some degree at least. Like there's very positive people, very negative people, and very few that just want to talk about it in a manner that is more their opinion, what they like, but not trying to talk for anyone else, not trying to, speak for what should or shouldn't be, essentially just stating what I enjoyed and, what I'd like to see more of. So I plan to kind of go through episodes 1 through 4 a little quicker. And then episode 5, I really want to dive into because there's so much in it, especially because if you haven't heard, spoilers for episode 4 and 5, Anakin, makes an appearance. So let's hurry up and get through episodes 1 through 4 to get to that. We're still going to focus on some things that I found pretty cool. One thing that's a little different is the crawl actually happens to be just straight up vertical instead of like vertical in a way. I know some people complained about this. I honestly don't really care. I feel like you get the idea, and it's a little easier to read because it's not getting smaller as it goes up, as with the traditional. Kind of just gives us the rundown of what's going on. The New Republic is now in charge. The Empire's fallen, and our heroes of the story, Ahsoka, mainly, considering it's her show, and the people that she rallies to fight, are worried that Thrawn, who had been taken away by Ezra back in the series finale of Rebels, to the unknown regions of space or another galaxy, somewhere we have never visited within canon Star Wars. Because of him being taken away and him being a kind of a leader within the Empire at that point, because he'd attained the rank of Grand Admiral pretty rapidly for being an outlier, because the Empire did not necessarily accept aliens in their ranks on normal occurrences. I just feel like it's all gonna be very, very important that I guess you don't have to necessarily go back and watch the Mortis arc or Rebels, but a lot of it makes the show so much more enjoyable. And I don't mean that in a way that detracts from the show at all. I feel like there's levels of fandom, and that's all right. There's surface level fandom. There's people are kind of into every movie, but not, the novels. And there are people that are into all of it. And for me, for the most part, I'll read almost every novel that comes out, watch every show, watch every movie, play every game. And this show, to me, is like the epitome of all of it finally coming together and meeting, you know, in one spot and making it all cohesive, the Star Wars universe. But, sorry, let's get back on track. Let's go through episode 1 through 4 so I can get to what I really want to talk about in episode 5. The show opens up. New Republic cruiser is transporting Morgan Elsbeth, who we saw Ahsoka capture in season 2 of Mandalorian. Transporting her back to the New Republic, I presume. Maybe Coruscant, somewhere to hold her in prison. And they run into a shuttle. The captain goes to meet the shuttle after they let them board. It appears to be 2 hooded figures, kind of looking like Jedi. But as we know from the trailers, there are Force users in this show that are not necessarily Jedi or Sith. They don't necessarily prescribe to or subscribe to either of those ideologies, and they kind of are just in it for what they want, which, I don't know, it's kind of understandable. You know, you have to kind of look out for yourself to some degree. They land on this ship and they try to kind of peacefully ask to be allowed to talk to Morgan Elsbeth and to get her without having to kill anybody, which is surprising and different for Star Wars villains. You know, straight up villains at least. And that's what kind of differentiates these guys, is at least Baylan, who's the master, and Shin, the female apprentice who you'll see in a second. They aren't necessarily Sith, straight up dark, just willing to execute anybody. And Baylan especially is trying to tell the captain, you know, just let me do what I need to do. And you'll see later on he tries to not have confrontation if it's not necessary. This is Shin. This is right after it becomes obvious to Baylan and Shin that they're going to have to fight to free their you know, ally and the New Republic's prisoner, who we've seen is right here, Morgan Elsbeth, who is out for herself, kind of, and I don't know, kind of callous and extremely selfish. She was willing to sacrifice all of the villagers, if you remember, in that episode of season 2 of Mandalorian. And that kind of just always stuck with me, that she's very inconsiderate of others, or at least just doesn't care. Maybe she considered it and decided she doesn't care. But here she is. We learn now that she's actually a Night Sister from Dathomir, and that means that she has the ability to manipulate the Force in a way that's a little different traditionally from the light side and the dark side, but it channels the dark side of the Force. And this is a new development from seeing her in season 2 of Mandalorian. She's freed by Baylan, and then we get the title card and kind of cut to see what Ahsoka's up to. She's approaching this temple, goes inside, does the puzzle to kind of figure it out, and then is approached by more of Morgan Elsbeth droids. We've seen these guys in season 2 of Mandalorian, when Michael Biehn had his cameo, his guest star appearance as the mercenary gunslinger. I don't know if he actually got a character name, but he actually got shot down by the Mandalorian when he tried to draw on him. And these HK droids were some of the droid bodyguards that were kind of roaming that village, searching for Ahsoka and the Mandalorian. And Ahsoka fought some of them then, so did Mando, took them out pretty easily. But this is a pretty significantly different situation just because there's 4 of them all around Ahsoka. And in that show, we only saw maybe 1 or 2 against our heroes at a time. And they also have weapons actually fight off a lightsaber. So they actually stand a chance. But surprisingly, Ahsoka, I mean, not really surprisingly, but it's pretty cool. Ahsoka takes them out in some pretty unique ways, kind of cutting the floor and dropping them through it, similarly to how she cut this circle in the floor for herself to go through. And then after the droids start to lose this battle, they decide to activate their self-destruct to just annihilate her and take her out. But she takes off, and Huyang happens to be flying the Jedi shuttle, and she jumps in, and they make a safe getaway while the presumably Dathomirian Night Sister temple is destroyed by the HK droid self-destruct procedures. This is Ahsoka meeting up with Home 1, seeing some of these ships. Okay. Yep. Here she is meeting up with Hera. This is kind of cool. I was so excited to see a lot of the Rebels cast make it to live action. We already got Zeb and Mando season 3. And we'd seen Chopper at least a little bit in Rogue One. But Hera, I'll admit, these first episode or 2 and the trailers, I wasn't really sold on this actress, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, as Hera. But as the season's gone on, I've really grown to like her as Hera, for live action purposes at least. And I just at least want to put that out there because I feel like that actress, she definitely got a lot of hate, but I feel like some of it, maybe the makeup team did a little better job with making the face look more or at least more layered, not one solid color throughout. I feel like that's what most people I've talked to's complaint has been, is that her makeup just is a little uncanny at times. But other than that, I feel like the actress has done a pretty good job. This is Huyang and Ahsoka being shown Balin and Shin freeing Morgan Elsbeth, as we saw in that previous scene, so that Ahsoka is caught up. This is Ahsoka giving the artifact that she got at that Dathomirian Night Sister temple, which is a star chart or a map, which is kind of a MacGuffin and becomes very relevant to everybody within the story for the next few episodes. So yeah, it's kind of like an orb that has rotating pieces, almost like a Rubik's Cube, but circular instead of cube. They talk about it a little. Oh, this is pretty nice. This had me very excited and kind of happy to see that Ryder Azadi made a live action appearance. Clancy Brown reprised his role as Ryder Azadi. And he's also been, Savage Opress. Maul is one of my favorite characters, so Savage, his brother, getting to be, in the flesh is really cool. And then you also see that the mural that we saw at the end of Rebels is right here also. This is the ceremony that they're having to kind of celebrate. Hold on, let's go to. There's a good look at Clancy Brown. Yeah, that mural was really nice looking. And then here's our first look at Sabine. They were kind of looking for her for this ceremony, and then it cuts away to, her wanting some isolation, wanting some solo time away from everybody, and not wanting to be the center of attention because she kind of almost has what I'd call, not necessarily survivor's guilt, because she doesn't think or know that Ezra is dead or anything like that. But she doesn't feel like everything is right just because the Empire is gone, because the rebels have won. She still feels like things are unfinished to a degree. So she runs from the ceremony in a way, kind of pretends that she didn't know about it. It's cool that she's hanging out in Ezra's old home, and you'll see that the tower, the communications tower on Lothal, is what I'm referring to. But you'll see that Ezra is here in hollow form. His only appearance, so far through episode 5. I'm hoping we get some decent Ezra, in these last few episodes at least. Same with Thrawn. But this is our first look at live action Ezra. And I feel like this actor looks the part, so I'm excited to see what he's like in person. This is her kind of reminiscing, watching one of his messages before he was lost to the unknown regions. And then you'll see here Morgan Elsbeth, now freed by Shin and Balin, who's not on screen right now. Ray Stevenson, rest in peace, great actor. Really love his work, and his character is already one of my favorite Star Wars villains or anti-heroes, for sure. But this is them checking up on that temple that Ahsoka was at that has now been destroyed by the HK droids going off. So here we have Balin talking to Morgan, telling her what he found when he went and investigated. Didn't find anything. The artifact was taken, the star chart, the map. And this is a map that they want to use to essentially retrieve Grand Admiral Thrawn, because they believe they can use him to unify the remnants of the Empire. And so far, Balin's motivations are kind of unclear. He talks about wanting great power and how he'll be able to do things for the greater good, essentially, but it's unclear what his motivations are, so I'm very interested to see what they end up being. Here we have Sabine and Ahsoka on the T6 shuttle. Sabine actually takes the artifact and decides to look at it at the tower, which unfortunately leads to it being taken. See, she's looking at it at the communications tower where she's been staying. HK droids and Shin arrive to take it from her. HK droids retrieve it. Some of them are destroyed, and then at this point there's one left, and Shin. And see, Shin has the artifact now. Shin steps up to duel Sabine, which is very cool because we've seen Sabine wield lightsabers before in Rebels, but to just see a live action, another, live action interpretation of a non-force sensitive or very mildly force sensitive character using a lightsaber and what that's like. kind of interesting, just because lightsabers have no weight to them other than the hilt itself. So that's supposed to be kind of deceptive for users that aren't used to them. So it's just interesting to see a presumably not force sensitive or very mildly force sensitive Sabine fight a definitely force sensitive Shin. You'll see her use some force powers throughout the show. See, here we go. Here she is. I mean, I don't want to diss Sabine too much, but she did definitely lose this fight pretty badly. She tried to put up a good fight, but it was very clear that Shin was more experienced and better with a lightsaber. By the end of this fight, though, see, Ahsoka knows something's wrong and is headed to try to essentially save the map and Sabine. She gets there just a second too late. Shin sees the ship coming, flees with HK droid in the star chart, and you'll see this little wound here, this little hole. She had gotten impaled on Shin's lightsaber. If you notice, it is off center for sure. So, I mean, I know a lot of people were upset that she got stabbed like that and survived, but I feel like given the location being very off center and not anywhere near her actual spine, not being high enough to hit her heart, and might even be low enough to avoid her lungs. So I feel like she has a pretty good chance of surviving since lightsabers cauterize instantly, and it was pulled right back out, and she's going to get help immediately. So luckily, Sabine survives, but we still get to kind of see a cool lightsaber duel to start the series. That's the end of the series, or end of episode 1. So let's move on to episode 2. Episode 2.
Why?
Okay, after the recap. See, there she was getting stabbed. Here she is recovering. Ahsoka took her to get treatment immediately. So, luckily, no long-lasting effects of that stab. And here you'll see a medical droid classic with Hu Yang. Here we are. This is almost like a temple or site, almost like that site on where Grogu was on the Seeing Stone. I'm guessing this one's Night Sister affiliated, because Morgan knowing about it and bringing this star chart here to figure out how to get to Thrawn. This is on Cetos, we later find out is the name of the planet. It's a kind of overcast sea planet. And then this scene. This is really cool. You get to see a couple Lothcats and the plains of Lothal actually kind of regrown, got some good grass. And look at Ezra's Tower in the distance. Very cool. I'll be right back. after the planes and kind of getting to see some Loth cats, which I always love seeing. See Ahsoka here on Lothal. This is Sabine's speeder, or her speeder bike. It's, very telling because the purple, the yellow, the colors we saw on her Mandalorian armor, and she even has little Loth cats painted on her helmet. It's very cool. This is Ahsoka looking at the tower, kind of trying to investigate what happened and figure out how these HK droids got there, using almost like a force echo, sensing what happened. There's a good look at a Loth cat. Those are always fun. There's the head of HK droid and the Loth cat not being too happy to see it. And they actually use this head. They try to access the memory to figure out where they came from, to figure out where Morgan might be hiding and where Balin and Shin would be then too. So they start, I guess, hacking or slicing this with this device, and it starts overheating or having issues, so it's almost like a race against time, and they barely get some information out of it before it's too late. Hera's here, kind of watching through hologram, which is kind of cool. We get cut back to Cetos. You'll see there's still guards. These guards are pretty much the same ones that we saw in season 2 of Mandalorian that were with Morgan Elsbeth. The humans, at least. This is her accessing the star chart, using it to start calculating where they could find Grand Admiral Thrawn. There's a good look at Shin and Balin. Let's a good look at the star chart while it's activated. You'll see this green flame down here indicating Night Sister magic. Here's the shuttle from the Ghost. Very cool seeing it in live action. The T6 landing next to it. Here's a Death Star droid. Oh, okay. This is when Hera and Ahsoka, they go and they visit some shipyards on Corellia because they have tracked the HK droids through that memory they were checking to this location. While they're here, inspecting, kind of looking around, trying to find their next clue or their next piece of this puzzle. See, here's the lightsaber wound, partially healed. They actually end up finding Imperial loyalists within this company, at least. And once they realize that, they realize it because there's a hyperdrive from a super star destroyer not being dismantled or not being destroyed or dismantled of any sort, just being kind of moved and taken somewhere. And once Ahsoka starts to question that, it becomes apparent that these guys are kind of shady. One of them says for the Empire and decides to, make his move and shoot a blaster, and it doesn't go well for him. A couple people get taken out by Ahsoka and Hera, and then Ahsoka ends up jumping down. That location they were just at was way up here in this, but up high. And she cut through a glass window, which you might have seen in some of the trailers, and jumped down. It was pretty cool. And this is her trying to chase down the hyperdrive so that essentially Morgan Elsbeth and the HK droids do not get it for whatever reason they want. This is one of the first times we get to see Merrick, or Maroc, depending on how you want to pronounce it. He appears to be an inquisitor from the days of the Empire, and is kind of described in the beginning of the show as a mercenary that works for Morgan Elsbeth, kind of like Shin and Balin. And also, obviously, being a former Inquisitor, knows how to use the Force, knows how to use a lightsaber. So he and some HK droids are about to try to make a stand and hold Ahsoka off long enough to get this hyperdrive out of here that Morgan Elsbeth wants for reasons our characters don't know yet. See, here it is actually being flown away, and here's the Phantom, the Ghost shuttle, chasing after it. Hera and Chopper in there. This is actually one of the first scenes they released, was when this shuttle was chasing that engine. Here's a really, cool scene of Maroc and an HK droid fighting Ahsoka. She ends up taking out this HK droid and then fighting Maroc by herself for a little bit. And it's kind of apparent that Maroc is stalling or just trying to kill time because he's trying to get out of there. He's trying to catch his ride and get out of there with the hyperdrive. So see, he runs and jumps on the shuttle with Shin. Once they're ready to go, he successfully held off Ahsoka, but Chopper happens to put a tracker on the ship. They end up figuring out that the ship goes to Cetos, and then Sabine figuring out that, she wants to go on this mission with Ahsoka. She wants to try to find out where Thrawn is and potentially bring Ezra home. Because last time we saw Ezra or Thrawn, they were together, being taken away to the unknown regions by Purgle. And this star chart could bring us to them. So here she is kind of mentally preparing to join up with Ahsoka. These are some of those Imperial loyalists being arrested after that little, battle or skirmish with Maroc and HK droid. Okay, Sabine's cut her hair. We get the mural again, which is very cool. Okay, hold on let's catch this. See, these three are together in a shuttle now, and they're headed to the location here where Morgan Elsbeth is. This is the Eye of Sion, which is a ship/hyper ring that is humongous. Almost like how the Death Star took a battle station and oversized it, 1,000%. This is Obi-Wan Kenobi's Jedi Starfighter hyper ring, oversized 1,000 times. And this is what they plan to use to jump to that other galaxy. And I think it's so big because they're going to use it to kind of tow or bring back either the 7th Fleet that Thrawn was taken away with, or some other fleet that maybe he's accrued in the meantime. See, that episode ends. Let's go to the next one. Okay, here we go. This is the recap. Begin with Sabine now being committed to I guess learning the Jedi arts. I don't honestly think she's training to be a Jedi. I think it's more along the lines of her just learning their philosophy in a way that's been edited and kind of, I don't know, amended by Ahsoka, I feel like. Because it's hopefully less strict and dogmatic because Ahsoka left the Jedi Order for some of those reasons. They're traveling through hyperspace at this point, heading to Cetos. You'll see Hu Yang's training Sabine. He's got his extra arms out, which is really cool, kind of scoring her attacks with his hollow sabers. Then Sabine does the classic blindfold, defense that we get from Luke in A New Hope. Just it's instead of a droid or a training probe, it's Ahsoka walking around smacking Sabine with a training sword. Which I don't know which would be worse, being shot by the probe or being smacked by a stick by someone. Which would be more annoying. There's a title card after they do a little bit of that training. Get some A-Wings. Get some more New Republic here. Here we go. Mon Mothma. Very nice seeing her after seeing her summon Andor. I'm excited for Andor Season 2 and to get to see her some more, hopefully. Hera's here having a meeting with them, requesting help with this Cetos mission to go and stop Shin, Balin, and Morgan and Marak from determining essentially the path to Thrawn and Ezra, and then going with the only map there. The senators, of course, bureaucracy, I guess, are difficult, and they don't allow Hera to have, I guess, an official authority to go on this mission. So she doesn't have support. She doesn't have the, backing, I guess, of the New Republic. It's if she goes, it's her and whoever she can rally, and that's it. So these guys are ahead on the way to Cetos. They arrive on the orbit of the planet and get in a bit of a dogfight with some of the fighters that Morgan Elsbeth has, along with Shin and Marak also being in fighters. There's some really cool scenes of Ahsoka doing, I guess, a spacewalk, what we would call it here, where she goes on the hull of the ship and does almost like a cartwheel and slices the ship, which is really cool. Let's see if I can get that. Here she is. This is after the cartwheel and after slicing the ship. She kind of gets lost floating in space and has to be picked up. There we go. When she's picked up, they end up going down into the atmosphere. There's Purgle in this atmosphere, which are the same creatures that jumped Thrawn and Ezra to that unknown galaxy, or the unknown regions. Here they are, finally making it down to the surface of the planet. And it has this really cool, red-leafed tree forest. Kind of reminds me of the weirwood trees in Game of Thrones. They land and shut down power to essentially mask their presence from scans and try to hide from those fighters. While they were landing, they got a scan of the Eye of Sion and they kind of get a exposition dump here of what it is and what it could be used for, which is going to the unknown regions once they have the coordinates or the path there. Into this episode, we kind of get Balin sending out the fighters to intercept Ahsoka and Sabine, who we know have landed in the forest now. That's pretty much the end of this episode, so let's move on to episode 4.
What did I miss?
We almost died.
Okay, let's get past the recap. Let's see, so this episode starts off with Hu Yang working on the ship since it was just in a dogfight. Ahsoka and Sabine talking inside the ship. We kind of cut to our bad guys talking amongst themselves at the temple, where they're trying to still nail down the path they need to take to get to Thrawn with that map and with this site. Okay, so those henchmen who we saw Balin sending out at the end of last episode, they start to arrive now. They arrive and kind of disrupt Hu Yang's work on the ship. You'll see here that the ship actually ends up getting damaged more. So now Hu Yang set back, as he ends up saying, has to do more work on the ship, and their timeline to be flight worthy is even longer. So Sabine and Ahsoka, they plan to head towards the temple where they, hope to find the star map, I presume. Let's see, Hu Yang is left to work. Here we have, that's a good image of Hera, Chopper, and Jason Syndulla, the child of Hera and Kanan Jarrus. So these guys are about to head to Cetos, and this is an unsanctioned mission that the New Republic is not signing off on. So she doesn't have a lot of help. It's just herself and a few fighters that are willing to go help. Here they begin the final calculations to determine the jump. And after Ahsoka and Sabine defeated all of the henchmen back at the ship and started their way in towards the temple, they send out the lieutenants, essentially. Marak and Shin come out to fight them and hopefully, in their eyes, hold off the enemy long enough to get their coordinates and get out of there. So really, it's a pretty good fight scene between Marak and Ahsoka and Shin and Sabine, both solo dueling or having solo duels. Eventually, Marak initiates the spinning saber that the Inquisitors all have, and as a standoff with Ahsoka, they kind of attack at each other, parry and attack. Ahsoka dodges whatever blades might have been close to her and leaves a pretty good slash across Marak's abdomen here. And that leads to us finding out. I'm going to mute this and play it and see if I don't get copyright struck for this. That Marak. Here we go. See that green burst? Pretty sure that means Marak was Night Sister magic, in that he was not still alive. He was either an undead inquisitor or an undead being that Morgan conjured, or an enhanced being similar to Savage Opress. How he was a Brock like Maul, but enhanced with Night Sister magic to give him extra strength. So it could be that as well. I'm hoping they give us some dialogue on that later on once we catch back up with them. So Ahsoka goes on ahead, meets up with Balin here. Morgan has left the temple, is now on the ship, the Eye of Sion, ready to leave. Balin has a very cool duel with Ahsoka. See, here she is on the Eye of Sion. Sabine's still dueling Shin. Here we are. They're still dueling. Ahsoka's trying to get the map, essentially, and stop them from getting the coordinates. Balin is very strong and heavy-handed, though, with the saber and essentially overpowering Ahsoka over time with all of his heavy hits. This is right after those heavy hits actually send Ahsoka over the cliffside into the ocean, presumably. And Balin turns around. Sabine now has the star map. Her blaster is, threatening to destroy it so that nobody can find Thrawn or Ezra. Balin knows better, though, and can kind of tell that she wants to find Ezra. So she's not gonna follow through with this. So he ends up essentially calling her bluff and making her hand it over and surrender instead of destroy it. They get the final calculations. The bad guy is still on the surface. Go up and join the Eye of Sion. See here. And the eye jumps right through our little rebel band of ships that has come to try to assist them, but arrived just a little too late. This is the huge part of episode 4. Finally, we cut back to the temple. It's a little bit more, it looks like a few hours later. It's morning, or at least lighter out. Ahsoka is nowhere to be seen. This is the cliff she fell off of. And we have this beautiful transition from waves crashing against the shore to what I assume is the world between worlds, because it looks just like we have seen the world between worlds represented in the past. She wakes up, a little bit out of it, and we are kind of lost at this point. At least myself as a viewer, I'm like, is she dead? Is she, pulled into the world between worlds again, like she was in Rebels? And then we hear someone speaking to her. And it ends up being Anakin Skywalker. So her master, Anakin Skywalker, present in this vision, world between worlds, whatever you want to call it. And that kind of sets up the 5th episode, which was huge. This 5th episode had so much in it. it is what I really am here to talk about. I loved all those episodes too. Not trying to take anything away from them. They set up what the fifth episode is. And the fifth episode just executes. It pulls off what I want out of Star Wars. It gives us everything we want. Here's the map destroyed by Balin after he got his coordinates. Here we are in the world between worlds, or I don't know, maybe Star Wars' version of Purgatory. And Ahsoka is dueling Anakin, essentially, for what he said is her life. Live or die, as he put it. Hera and Jason, Hu Yang, they're all searching for Ahsoka and Sabine, and they do not have any clue that Sabine has left in the Eye of Sion now as a captive of Balin, and Ahsoka is in the world between worlds or somewhere, having a duel with her long dead master at this point. He's been dead at least 7-8 years. But he's actually appearing the way he appeared maybe 30 years ago. Jason kind of is getting hints of being force sensitive and feeling that there's a duel of some sort going on nearby. It's almost as if he can almost feel or hear through that veil of the force to that world between worlds, since this is right where Ahsoka was pulled in. We get some classic moves from Hayden. Ahsoka actually lands a nice kick to the side of his head here. And then we kind of get a scene where Ahsoka tells him she thinks maybe there's nothing left to learn. And he says, oh, okay, I'll show you. And decides to cut the bridge she's standing on and make her fall all the way down into a flashback where she is, you can't tell in this image here, much smaller, because this is our first look at Clone Wars Ahsoka. Live action. We're even getting Phase 1 clones around her, since this is very early Clone Wars when she was still very new to Anakin. Here she is following Anakin and the clones into battle, kind of second guessing what they're doing. Anakin's wearing his Clone Wars armor, which is super nice looking. It's so awesome to see him dressed the same way we saw him in Clone Wars, and to kind of have a less dramatic attitude, more of a attitude of feeling like he needs to be a leader and teach, and feeling confident in his ability, the way he was in the Clone Wars, before he kind of starts to lose that, when he loses his student and starts to be disillusioned with everything, which we then see in episode 3. So it's so nice to see Hayden in this, you know. And then, for those clone boys out there, it was also sweet seeing Phase 1 clones and the old markings when colors on the armor of clones, at this point when they're Phase 1, it actually stood for rank, if there was a color, not battalion or division. The Phase 2 armor, they start to actually paint armor color-coded to their unit. But this, I don't remember for sure what blue was. Might have been sergeant or lieutenant. I'm kind of thinking green was sergeant. So either way though, very cool to see this represented in live action for the first time ever, since the only other time we saw this armor in a movie or on screen, other than the Clone Wars, was episode 2, and that was all digitally rendered. None of it was physically there like this. This is at least a break. I wouldn't say the end of the battle, but a break in the battle, and we see Ahsoka kind of taking in what war is, seeing that it breaks people, that it's maybe not worth it, not worth all this. Like, it's especially when the other side is using droids and you're sending in living beings. We have a very touching moment of Ahsoka holding the hand of a trooper here and kind of comforting him, it seems like. There's a nice look at Anakin in his Clone Wars armor. Oh, man. Oh, you're not late. Howdy, Charlie. I just now saw that you're there. Anyone can drop in anytime. This is live now. I mean, you can rewatch it anytime. I'm going to keep it on the channel. It's more so I just wanted to do, I don't know, a free form kind of just going back through this, because it was a great experience, and I had a lot going on in my head when it was happening, so I kind of want to try to spill some of it out there. Some more good looks at clones and medical droids. Oh, thanks, Charlie. See, I've heard that from Generation Tech, he's kind of guessing that this battle scene is Teth, but it could also be Ryloth, since there were Twi'lek rebels, quite a few of them present in this scene. Not rebels necessarily, but Twi'lek fighters fighting with the Republic to keep the Separatists out, which we did see in the Clone Wars. One of my favorite mini arcs is Jedi Master Gundy and Captain Keeley. They're like one episode arc where they make a huge stand on Ryloth and end up holding off the Separatists long enough for the Twi'lek natives to get supplies and actually be able to eat, because they were on the verge of starting to starve. But they have a hero sacrifice. Captain Keeley and Gundy both die, but it's one of those moments in Clone Wars that just sticks with you because it's so real, so different than you see in the movies, where it's not. It's more about the hero, the protagonist. You don't get those little side stories about heroes necessarily that don't get plot armor that live a normal hero's existence, where it can be ended through those heroic actions they're doing, not necessarily working out. I guess working out, but having to make massive sacrifices to pull them off, like Gundy did. This scene too, you'll see here that we have a Phase 1 Captain Rex in the background here, talking to a couple Twi'leks. Really sweet seeing Rex. This is the end of the Teth / Ryloth / whatever planet that was battle scene. Back on Cetos, the New Republic and Hera are searching for Ahsoka and Sabine, hoping they're somewhere, flying over the water, because Jason has said that he could hear the saber duel that was happening earlier between Ahsoka and Anakin. Carson Teva from Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett. I like this guy. He's a great character actor. I like when he has these little cameos, just helps tie the world together. That, and he's a massive Star Wars fan in real life. His pilot jacket, similar to Hera's in this shot here, that you see him wearing in Mandalorian season 3, especially in that bar. He made that himself as a fan, as a cosplay, before he got his role. And then it was considered good enough that they let him use it as his costume. So I just definitely respect that. That's very cool. That he enjoys Star Wars so much that he made a quality enough jacket that they put it on screen. Okay, here we get another flashback to the Clone Wars. This is a good little shot to kind of explain where we are. You'll notice Ahsoka kind of has Mandalorian designs here, like the Ironheart. And you'll see that the 332nd paint job is on this clone here. So this is a branch of the 501st. It's been assigned to Ahsoka to essentially take Mandalore back from Maul. This is towards the very end of the Clone Wars, and at this time in the Clone Wars, Anakin and Kenobi have just separated from Ahsoka and Bo-Katan. And they are going off to save the Chancellor, and Ahsoka comes here to try to capture or stop Maul and free Mandalore from him and his Maul-Delorians, which are some of my favorite characters, hence the name Maul Walker, and my own original character that I cosplay being a Maul-Delorian, mainly just by heritage. My character is the son of a Maul-Delorian during the time of Maul's rule. We get a few cool scenes here where actually see, where's it at? I just want to get that little shot we had. There's a short little shot. Here we are. Here's some of it. You actually get to see some of these Maul-Delorians. See the horns. Very cool seeing some of them brought to live action. Yeah. They're some of my favorites. I love just the take on the Mandalorian culture being combined with Maul's tenacious, kind of independent, very cunning planning. You know, there's a very cool collab that to see Maul and the Mandalorians together in the Clone Wars. So to see it in live action is very cool. But we also in this scene get a scene. Where is it at? Come on, give me. We get a little bit of a phase 2. Here we go. Phase 2 Rex. Very cool. This scene goes on. Anakin and Ahsoka kind of hang back a second while the clones run off. This is a flashback, and Anakin wasn't actually here. So he starts asking Ahsoka about it, and Ahsoka kind of explains what happened. They kind of get into, what happened to Anakin, how he turned to the dark side. And we actually see Anakin in his Mustafar look, essentially, where he's got Sith eyes in that episode 3 outfit. The only difference is this time he actually has a red saber too. So in this scene, he starts fighting Ahsoka, essentially telling her that she needs to choose whether she wants to live or die. Which I took this almost like motivation to get her to let go of what she could not do in saving Anakin and to focus on the present and to choose to continue fighting, which is a good message. The fight ends up pushing young Ahsoka back into this world between worlds-esque domain where we're in the stars. And then we get adult Ahsoka dueling Mustafar Anakin. And this was very intense, very good stuff. Even those contacts on Hayden's eyes, it's like they did a good job making them so, I don't know, ununiform and disturbing, realistic looking. How this one looks almost smaller and this one's larger and more jagged in spots. Very cool to see Sith eyes like that. I actually wonder if they're digital or contacts. You never know nowadays. But Ahsoka, tells him, I choose to live, I want to keep fighting, and he reverts back to, good boy Anakin with blue eyes. Disappears. And Ahsoka starts to sink into water, which is, at first, it's like, oh no, why does this water look all sheeny like oil or something? But then it's kind of just a cool transition to her re-emerging, I think, in the physical, real world, just underwater here. Because at this point, she had been missing for hours, if not a day or two. And the X-Wing pilots and the ghosts, they had been flying around looking for her. So I don't believe that she was just floating in the water for that whole time, unconscious, underwater. I think that she went to the world between worlds, or a force realm of some sort like that, where she communed with Anakin, and Anakin gave her this final lesson, this motivation to, underwater training, to continue fighting and to just do what she needs to do and to not give up yet just because they're ahead and there's still things she can do. This is kind of cool. We get to see almost like a Coast Guard-esque rescue of a X-Wing pilot jumping off a ship with a line anchored to him and grabbing Ahsoka out. And see coming up to the ghost. Ahsoka's alright. You see Jason and Chopper, happy to see them coming back with her. He had given them this, spot to go find her. He sensed it within the Force. We get a very rare shot of Ahsoka without a headband or anything to bridge this gap, this transition from orange to white. It's very weird looking. I don't know. Looks alright though. I mean, looks good enough for knowing it's a fictional alien. Hu Yang shows her that the star chart has been sliced and diced in half, and they have no hope of finding Thrawn, Ezra, and where the Eye of Sion jumped to with Sabine. They eventually kind of deduce. Pretty much Ahsoka realizes that Sabine had to have gone with them. kind of funny. Ahsoka's wearing her white cloak here. And I noticed, that, you know, all over the internet today, and even from my watch party, that people were commenting on this. And I don't feel like it's some weird leveling up thing. I feel like it's just a change of clothes. And not like that she changed her clothes, but like it's just another pair of clothes that was in her closet. And since the other ones were wet, they put these ones on her. Since we saw these same clothes in Rebels. So I feel like she honestly just has a few different sets of clothes rather than just having the same looking set of clothes all the time. And that it's not like a leveling up thing. But maybe, maybe for the story, maybe symbolically they did that, but for practical reasons, I think it's just another cloak within her closet. This is a scene where she kind of sorts out that Sabine went with the Eye of Sion and then determines, okay, we can follow them. What we need to do is follow the Purgle. We need to commune with them. And this was a scene that actually, I don't know, it brought relevance or credit to a piece of Star Wars that I didn't care about before. Episode 1 of Tales of the Jedi. I kind of just watched it once or twice. Never really wanted to rewatch it. It's about an infant Ahsoka getting lost in the woods on a hunting trip, and essentially a saber-toothed tiger, an alien version of that, making friends with her because she can bond with it through the Force, which is cool, and it's an ability that not a lot, but some Jedi have, as we've seen Ezra has it. But it's cool because it comes back full circle in this moment, and made me appreciate seeing her do that then, because she kind of brings it full circle here. And here we have, look how small the ghost is. The ghost is right here. And this is the Purgle she's talking to. Yeah, shout out to Syntax. But she communes with this Purgle essentially and connects with it. Essentially asks for a ride. Hey, can you take us where you guys go? Take us to that other galaxy. And it's really funny because the New Republic shows up. Finally, they didn't want to come support the mission in the beginning, but they show up now only to reprimand Hera for going on the mission by herself without authority. But at this point, the whales are leaving, and it's like, get out of the way. And Carson Teva's just trying to buy time, and it's a pretty funny scene. And then here's a good shot of Ahsoka. I don't know. I mean, maybe, I don't know why, honestly. I feel like maybe Ahsoka should have put it together, but maybe she was still kind of cut off from some of those Jedi abilities, and she's just now willing to come back to him after that communion with Anakin. I'll be right back, though. One more break. Okay, we are back. See, here is our ginormous space whale. I assume this is the granddaddy or the boss of them. There's a good shot of Ahsoka facing its mouth as it's opening. Very scary. I wouldn't want to go in there. They fly the ship in, though, after it agrees to take them. The whales happen to be there because, like, if you noticed in some of the earlier episodes, I think episode 3, when we first see Cetos, Balin actually sees one in the clouds, and we kind of learn that this planet is part of the space whale's path that it takes, that they take, this pod at least, through space. And whenever the star chart is being looked at by Morgan Elsbeth, we actually see those space whales on the star chart, essentially circling Peridea, where they're going. That's what Balin's called it. I don't know what the Night Sisters or Morgan calls it, so we'll find out. But this is a pretty cool shot of the T6 with ginormous teeth around it. They should give it a nice toothbrushing while they're in there. But, see, the New Republic still not realizing that they're serious about, Carson Teva eventually, after trying to stall, just said, hey, they're leaving in space whales. And they were like, what? We don't know what you're saying. What do you mean? And then this is what they see. Just a pod of space whales flying right at them. And they actually go right around the ship. I was curious whether they were going to bump it or damage it at all. Kind of glad they didn't. Just not give the New Republic any reason to dislike the space whales. And then, okay. See, the space whales start their hyperdrives up. See that glow starting? I've got to unmute it, and I've got to play this one little part, guys. I hope it doesn't get copyright struck. Listen to what Hera says.
Ahsoka, looks like they're about to jump.
Sorry you can't make the trip.
Oh, it's all right. Jason's too young to travel between galaxies.
Hera, I'll find them. I promise.
May the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you. Very cool. Very Star Warsy. Brings it all back to those original Star Wars feels while still incorporating so much new stuff. I've been so, I guess, happy with the Ahsoka show and just where Star Wars as a whole is right now. I know that a lot of people are disappointed sometimes, whether it be by a show or a movie, but to me, Star Wars is a world. It's a galaxy. It's more than one galaxy now. So the the point is bigger than just those movies. And this show is finally like the culmination of animated shows such as the Clone Wars and Rebels, which I really loved watching, and I've watched multiple times at this point. And those original Star Wars movies, 1 through 6, and even some of the expanded universe, the books, comic books, all coming together to create something that, to me, is very enjoyable. I obviously would never presume other people enjoy it just because of me. I don't think anyone should speak in absolutes about something. They should only speak for themselves. But to me, as someone who's like, I read every audiobook that comes out for Star Wars pretty much at this point, adult level, I listen to while I'm at work. I play every game, watch every show, and this show is finally bringing it all together. So I'm really excited to see where it goes from here after getting something, as mystical and out there as that Force vision or trip to the world between worlds was with Ahsoka and Anakin. Because that's something straight out of Clone Wars or Rebels. And I know that maybe some older Star Wars fans or fans that are really just in touch with 4, 5, 6, the original trilogy, they might not understand or like some of this really out there stuff. But I really hope that they can reconsider and just try to read more of it, get into more of the material, because there's so many like cool stories out there that are just overlooked, and a lot of this much more dense like material about the Force, about the Star Wars galaxy, this super dense material going to other galaxies, having other species, hopefully an intergalactic threat, which is what I hope, if what the novels have been talking about when it comes to Thrawn comes to be. All that stuff is going to be relevant going forward, I feel like, and all of it was endorsed or seeded essentially by George Lucas, especially a lot of this Ahsoka, world between worlds, mysticism within the Force. This was all stuff that Dave worked on in the Clone Wars with the Mortis arc, and a lot of the Clone Wars with George Lucas. So it's very cool to just see it continue to evolve, and to me it feels like just a natural continuation and expansion of the world that I want to know more about. I get that some fans want mystery. I don't. I mean, you can keep some things a mystery, but I don't consider mysteries being ruined just because you keep expanding the galaxy. Because this Star Wars galaxy is so big that I don't think people really comprehend how big a galaxy is, and how like there's hundreds of planets within this Star Wars galaxy, and it makes sense for some Jedi to be hidden or away, or some Jedi to not be in this story and maybe be doing their own thing. I feel like Luke at this point is probably still doing his own Jedi journey of going to temples and learning about what traditional Jedi were according to the textbooks and according to the temples, and kind of trying to learn from that and put his own spin on it. So I don't mind Ahsoka kind of doing her own thing, knowing that, okay, I need to go do this, and kind of leaving Luke to do his thing, especially if she's worried about him and cares about him due to her relationship with Anakin. Her being Anakin's Padawan, I feel like she probably really cares about his offspring and doesn't want to put them in any danger or risk, especially after the danger and risk they already just went through to save the galaxy in this combined effort. What's really cool about like viewing Star Wars from a much larger lens and seeing all these different properties within Star Wars, like Rebels, is that you can view Thrawn and the Seventh Fleet, how they were taking, they were the largest fleet within the Empire. They were a legitimate threat to the survival of the rebellion and any space battles the rebellion hoped to wage. They would most likely lose if the Seventh Fleet showed up, because Thrawn was a tactical genius and had a humongous amount of firepower. But without Ezra sidelining Thrawn, sidelining the Seventh Fleet, I feel like the original trilogy doesn't play out the same way. And all this kind of builds together to tell one larger story about the Force, waging this never-ending fight against the bad stuff going on within the galaxy. And I'm not spiritual, real world, but within this context, it makes sense to me. So I'm excited to see Ahsoka kind of get her turn and Anakin get his. They both kind of got that closure that I would have liked to see, and I feel like they both needed. Maybe not Anakin. I mean, who knows what he feels and needs, since he is, at this point, one with the Force. But I feel like Ahsoka definitely needed this closure of talking to Anakin and realizing that, okay, I've got to just keep fighting. I can't just be paralyzed because I don't know what to do next. I've got to just keep at least progressing forward. And I'm just glad that scene to me made this show entirely worth it, just the way that the Vader Kenobi fight at the end of Kenobi and that dialogue between Hayden and Kenobi there made that show, made that whole show worth it to me. So going forward, at least from the show, because we still have episodes 6, 7, and 8, I'm really hoping to get into Ahsoka and hopefully, the space bells don't take long to get there. I hope we don't have like a long trip at this point. I hope that next episode we jump there, we get there, and everybody's just in the other galaxy and we can get to the next part of the story. And maybe we get Ezra and Thrawn next episode. I'd be really excited about that. I've always loved Ezra as a character from Rebels. I didn't quite understand why some people didn't like him in the beginning. I felt like he was relatable, a kid, like he was young. And then he matured over the show. But just seeing him in live action would be really cool. Thrawn, one of my favorite characters. Getting to see him in live action would be really, really cool too. So I'm hoping next episode we get to that galaxy. Even if the episode is just back with the Eye of Sion, just seeing Sabine reunited with Ezra, or Thrawn, brought on board, as we saw in those trailers, walking onto the Eye of Sion's bridge. That would be, to me, that is up there. I can't put it on the same level as Clone Wars flashbacks, but, I'm 32. Clone Wars, I wasn't quite as young as some of my friends. The 90s and the early 2000s were my heyday for Star Wars. I first saw the original trilogy, right before prequels, then saw the prequels. For me, Thrawn and some of that expanded universe stuff is what I have been dreaming about seeing. So I'm really excited to hopefully see Thrawn next episode. I'm guessing that the Eye of Sion is so big and overscaled because they're going to try to bring a fleet of some sort back. I was actually interested when the Eye of Sion jumped and kind of jumped through those New Republic ships. I thought that it might pull the ships with them, into the hyperspace and actually drag them with it. But it didn't do it, so I'm actually kind of wondering if it is possible for that ring to kind of synchronize with ships, maybe with a fleet, and help jump it across that big of a distance. It'd be really cool. I mean, my predictions for the show as a whole, I feel like there's definitely going to be more to Thrawn than people expect. I feel like he's not going to be near as simple of a villain as he was in Rebels, even though he was very well represented in Rebels, I feel like. I loved his mannerisms, how he was portrayed. And I'm excited that Lars is actually coming back to play him in live action. So that'll be really cool. But I'm hoping that there's more to this and that, I mean, it wouldn't shock me. And I actually wouldn't be upset if Thrawn and Ezra are somehow allied at this point. Maybe they had to ally to survive after the jump. I don't know. But I feel like at some point, Thrawn's going to reveal that there's this extra galactic threat that he wanted the Empire to combat. And that's why he was there in the first place. But I'm hoping it almost ends in a way that's ominous because we're worried about that extra galactic threat, but also kind of a good note or a note that would make me happy, where Thrawn is more of the anti-hero, man willing to take extreme measures and not just a typical, one-dimensional villain. And I'm really feeling like they're going to do that. I have hope, at least. I know some people were worried before the show that Thrawn would be portrayed in a way like that. But with the way they've portrayed Balin specifically, and how he's come off as very measured and not just ruthless, I feel like they're going to give Thrawn, his due diligence and actually portray him the way he's been portrayed. There's been 6 new canon novels now focused on Thrawn, and I've read all of them. They're a great read. There's 3 that take place, before Rebels, or at least before the end of Rebels, once he's in the Empire. And then there's the 3 Ascendancy novels that take place as a prequel trilogy and kind of set up how Thrawn gets to join the Empire and how he leaves his original group of people, the Chiss Ascendancy. But it'd be really cool too if we even get some of the Chiss Ascendancy starting to be incorporated into this story, because we know that Filoni is going to get a movie, that he's directing a film. Yeah, the Grisk to me and to a lot of people, we're hoping at least that they are the new Yuzan Vong, that they are that extragalactic threat that comes in, and maybe we get some big war where, the known galaxy, everyone we've known, has to fight um, ally together, regardless of their own issues, against this threat from the outside that doesn't care about who they are and just wants to wipe everyone out. So that would be just a different angle that I think would be very cool to explore. And it's exactly where the expanded universe went with the Yuzon Vong and that war. So I'm really hoping that we get there. But just to end this and kind of wrap things up, I'm really, really happy with how the show's been going so far. I hope that after this last episode and the next few, that people will maybe want to check out Rebels and Clone Wars more. I know it's animated. I know that some people don't like watching animation. I myself am a huge anime fan, and I'm just a fan of stories, good stories, good storytelling, regardless of the medium. So, if you can suspend, whatever it is that makes you dislike the animated side of this when it comes to the Clone Wars and Rebels, if you can just, try to sit through it, I think that most of you guys that haven't seen those would really enjoy them, especially if you're enjoying Ahsoka so far, because it would really enhance and kind of enrich your viewing of the rest of Star Wars, because there is so much within the Clone Wars. There's 7 seasons, and there's 4 seasons of Rebels. So it's just a lot of Star Wars content and a lot of just additional adventures in that galaxy that we all love. So it just doesn't make sense to, I don't know. I guess if you don't want to watch, don't watch, but to me, you'll be missing out. It's kind of like the novels. Some people I accept they're never going to read the novels, but some of the novels, even if you just listen to them as an audiobook, they're wonderful. Especially the High Republic, because the High Republic has been presented so far as just a publishing project. It's only books, audiobooks, and comics. It's not anything live action yet. The Acolyte will take place at the end of the High Republic, so I'm kind of excited about that show. But I'll save that for another time. I'm hoping we actually get some new info or maybe a trailer for that eventually. We've gotten a few images at least already. But I hope you guys are enjoying Ahsoka. I hope that you guys keep watching the show and that you enjoy it for what it is, because it's great having access to so much Star Wars and being able to go to this galaxy this often, because there's been many times where there's been breaks within Star Wars, and I mean, after the original trilogy, people thought it was over. After the prequels, people thought it was over. And the fact that we keep getting more adventures in this galaxy that is so vast and rich with potential anyway, I feel like it's only right, especially now that we're getting we're expanding outside of the known galaxy to other areas. There's so much you could do storytelling wise, and I'm really looking forward to where they go long term. What they could do with some of those stories down the road once they do the sequels to the sequel trilogy, the new Jedi Order movies. But anyway, I hope you guys all enjoyed, my long, drawn out commentary. Anyway, Have a good night, and I'll see you guys next time I see you.